Welcome to Green Medicine Expeditions. I'm Geoff D'Arcy and I want to take you on an expedition to explore the plant medicines of the indigenous Maori of New Zealand. New Zealand is a remarkable country of stunning, diverse natural beauty, jagged mountains, rolling pasture and steep fjords. These islands are one of the Earth's most spectacular bioregions. New Zealand was the last significant landmass on Earth to be settled by humans. The East Polynesians, or the Maori, reached New Zealand about 700 years ago in a series of tremendous oceanic voyages, and to settle what was to become New Zealand just some 4,600 years after Australia was settled. The Maori were ferocious warring tribes, known today for their haka, the war dance made famous by New Zealand's all-black rugby team. Today, the tourist haka would put laughter, not fear, into the hearts of the ancient Maori warriors. After a 12-hour flight from LA to New Zealand and a day visiting amazing New Zealand vineyards, we were ready for our green medicine expedition. New Zealand lies in the southwest Pacific, a vast ocean. Its two islands, North and South Island, with Stewart Island, a smaller one, lie offshore to the south. These islands are remarkable in their diversity. From the north, we visited with the Ngati Kuri tribe. Traveling down through this incredible countryside, we visited Rotorua and met with a herbalist there. Crossed the straits of the Cook Straits over to Picton and traveled down on our journey towards Stewart Island, which is a remarkably pristine island off of the south. It has some of the most unspoiled natural ecology going back at least 40 million years. New Zealand's plants are very special. They've evolved slowly amongst unique geology and animals that are now extremely diverse. 85% of all flowering plants are still endemic, appearing nowhere else in the world.
Lake Whakaue trail that leads up to the lake that's up that way. We're walking down this way. This is part, believe it or not, of a famous hiking trail called the Hillary Trail that traverses the west coast of the North Island. Absolutely fantastic walking this section in bare feet. The water's cold, it's a beautiful day. You can see why New Zealanders love to be in bare feet most of the time. And this is their hiking trail. But the plants that are alongside the hiking trail, this is the harakake. Harakake was used by the Maori for weaving. This is one of the commercial plants that the English traded for in the early days. And along with whaling and harakake were some of the plants that they were after, and the whales in the ocean they were after. So this plant, they never cut the first three leaves. This plant is considered family. It's so vital to the Maori. And they never cut this harakake when it's flowering, because that would damage the plant and they couldn't come back to re-harvest.
Black magnetic sand. Huge dunes. Freshwater Lake Wainamu is protected on one end by massive dunes.
So the Rimu is a spruce that Captain Cook, when he first came here in 1769, used this spruce to make spruce beer. And it was used mainly to try to ward off scurvy and protect his crew. You've got to remember that Captain Cook came here, 10% of his crew were around collecting botanicals. He had two botanists and he had a bunch of assistants and artists just to catalogue the plants that he discovered. So Totara tree was originally used for carving in canoes by the Maoris in ancient times, but more recently this tree is sought after for Totara oil, which is an essential oil. It is a major antibacterial. It's used in cosmetics, it's used in very many different products. It's a major export from New Zealand for its antibacterial content and its addition to other products. This tree can grow up to 30 meters and it has 800 to 1,800 lifespan. So any tree that can live that long, you know has got some serious protection going on in the oil and its sap. Manuka plant, which is Kunzea ericoides, is renowned around the world. It's tea tree oil. It's a great antibacterial. It's originally used by the Maori for scalding and burns.
This is probably about 80% Manuka honey and
Yeah.
about 5% Manuka honey. We had it recently tested, and we also tested for toxins, the tootin, which can be a problem after New Year's.
Where does
And
tootin
those-
come from?
It's the honeydew off a passion vine hopper that sucks the and its excrement is effectively the honeydew, and that's what the bees collect. And there's a threshold there, but we have none of that.
Oh, nice.
So all of those
This is all
those
ill.
toxins collect if there's too much of it around into the
That's
honey.
right. You can get it up the Coromandel,
Yeah.
in particular. That's where they discovered it
Ah.
first, and you can get it in Northland or around Auckland.
Yeah.
And have you got it tested for the
UMF?
UMF, yeah?
Yes, and the UMF is not high, and I'm not allowed to call it Manuka honey.
Okay.
What
Because it's
percentage
less
do you
than
need?
5%.
Yeah,
So less than 5% is not Manuka
Yeah.
honey?
that's right.
Yeah.
So you've got to have about 8 times that. I think you've got to have like about 40 or 50%
Wow.
Manuka.
Manuka honey
Yeah.
to be able to call it
Call it
Manuka.
that. What does UMF stand for? That's the healing property, isn't it?
Unique Manuka
It is.
factor.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think, and I'm only guessing, as they start to explore more and more of the chemicals and properties of the honeys from the different sources, I think you'll start to find more and more
Things having-
chemicals get discovered, and people start to attribute things to native plants.
So the Manuka though is the big immune builder, right? Is the Manuka honey?
That's the classic one that they've found so far. So you
Yeah.
also get the Manuka oil and the tea tree. You know, it's good for burning, for barbecues and for smoking fish and
Yeah.
cheese.
Come on. We're only going to take the ones that get caught. We're just going to take enough that's going to sustain us, what we need, and everything else goes. See, a lot of these, like we've let most of them out, babe,
Oh, fantastic.
and there's still some here we're going to let go as well.
Just for our breakfast, when we want to go for a fish, and we want to take some bait, and then this is part of the way we'll catch our bait. And as well, we let a lot go. We make sure we only try and take what we're going to need.
Yeah.
It's amazing you catch so much in such a short time.
And that's why it's important to make sure that not too much is taken, and it's good if you can still release some.
Takeke. Yeah.
That you go,
It's a
go
takeke.
through.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful eating.
And then he met my mother,
Yeah.
who was from here, and then he jumped ship and got thrown in jail as an overstayer.
And who would be the herbalist or the healer that you would?
We all are.
Yeah. So
We
you
all
all got good knowledge of
Yeah,
plants and
yeah.
how to use them.
Our people, you know, the plants that mean that they used to heal themselves.
Yeah.
But every Māori person is a healer.
Yeah.
You know, every Māori person is an oracle. Every Māori person is, you know, we have this connection to our whenua and to our ancestors that mean everything to us.
Yeah.
And like for me, in the tourism industry and meeting a lot of people around the world, Dave and I, we get deep sadness from meeting a lot of people from around the world.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we do.
Because of the disconnectedness
they're so
they have.
disconnected. Yeah, they're so disconnected. They don't know who they are.
Yeah.
They don't know where they're from. They don't know a lot of their history because the hurts of their ancestors they don't want to put onto their children.
Yeah.
And when they speak with us, it's really sad.
Yeah.
Because it's hard for me to really fathom that I could never have that. If I ever felt like that.
Yeah.
You know? I think how could I feel if I felt so disconnected from my ancestors?
Right.
But I can't imagine that feeling. I know it'll be a deep, deep loss.
Yeah.
But really, I can't really imagine it
Yeah.
because it's not in our makeup.
You would never
you know?
have that.
And like for us, our connection is to our moana.
Right.
Our connections to our whenua. Our connections to the air we breathe.
Fin-wise.
Our land.
Yeah.
Our home.
So
You know, my grandmother always said to me, may be, whether it's a seed for a love of something, you know. You don't need a lot to make that seed grow.
Yeah.
But you know, make the most of that space. But yeah, for us, it's our waterways.
Yeah.
You know.
So the plants that you would use to help heal, I mean, are they just local plants that are around?
Some are
Does anybody
local.
go like over to the other side to grab something if there's?
No,
they don't?
like for us, because Dave and I both do this, you know, like we know there's some. We don't know everything.
Yeah.
We just know the plants that we use to help us.
Yeah.
You know, and so for us, we go out there, we collect what we need for what we need it for, and we just bring it back. Like I make balms out of certain plants that we have here. I make poultices. I know how to use the herbs, the plants and stuff that are out there for bruising, for drawing out bruising, for you know, we'd like to tell you to one guy about the honey and stuff up here, and he's showing us their honey, you know, their business, and they're flying them in with helicopters, you know, all over our land. They can't get in here. A lot of people try get in here. This is all our land, all this area here.
So this is like a reserve?
It's all our land. It's not a reserve, it's Maori owned land. Yeah, and so our tribe, Ngati Kuri. So from the 90-mile beach, the dunes, right across to here, all the way north to Te Atiawa to Cape Breton and all that is our home. You know, all this area here, you can only get access through us. Our tribe, Ngati Kuri, went over there and they tried to refloat and couldn't. And so what they did was that night they loaded them all up onto trailers, because it was quite rough over on the west coast. They walked across to the east coast to Rotorua beach, and they tried to float them down. And everyone went down and, you know, they're trying to float them and put them out. Dave and I, they're doing it because you know, they're hungry, committing suicide.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so they floated them and everything, and our son Totara, he's really scared. And he woke up at 2 o'clock, really upset, because they were going to come. And then he said that, so I put him to bed, and he had a little bit of a cut on him. And then the next morning got the phone call that they died. Like Dave and I, we worked with Doc for a few months saving these really, really rare plants. They're only endemic to our home up here, and so for us, and they couldn't find any of them. So Dave and I was really big and pregnant with our baby, the one that's out there now. And we went out there to look for these plants, and we're, you know, breeding it all on our hands, and he's really looking for these treasures. And we found a dead whale. Well, not a dead whale. We found a whale that was still alive, but it was really not well. And so Dave and I went up to it and, you know, tried to run water over the net, and we thought, oh no, she's crying, she's really traumatised. So we drove down the beach and found her baby. It was further down the beach, but her baby had died. And so we put the baby into the back of the trailer and brought the baby up and put it by her. And she was wailing, you know. And then straight away my stomach started to go really crazy. Like I was about 3 weeks from giving birth, and my stomach just started going crazy. And I said to Dave, I'm going to give birth. You know, I'm going to give birth right now. And so I realised he was traumatised. My baby was traumatised. So I hopped on the thing and started walking over the dunes to get right away from her crying. And I walked for quite a while before my baby settled, and I knew then he'd come here, the local crying. And so Dave came and got the dock people up and try and you know, save her and stuff, but of course we couldn't, so we euthanised her. But ever since then, Te Wā has this connection with the fauna, you know.
So this is
And the
yourself.
whales, and maybe
And the whales too?
Yeah, the whales.
So this
sharks.
is the special one. That so he woke you
Like
up.
he's been out there and diving, like the last dive they went out there, him and his cousin, and then these sharks were there, and so they scrambled up onto this rock and they said, what do we do? And like they're here and the shore is there, and there's all these sharks around the rock, and then along came this wave, swept them off the rock into the water, and they swam across to this other rock and still could see all the sharks, swam across to this other rock and scrambled onto that and sat there, and they said, what do we do? The tide's coming in. all the sharks, and they thought, we've got to do it. So they slipped into the water and they said how they were going to do it. They were going to swim across to the shoal and it would just make their way down along the side. And just when they got there, the waves were just whacking them around. And Te Wasi, we looked back and could see them coming. But they weren't agitated, they weren't aggressive, they didn't look like they were hunting. But he said they were swimming behind them. And they swam all the way to the shore. This wave picked them up and threw them onto the shore. And they looked back to us and we saw them.
Unbelievable.
Didn't even harm them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then Dave and I looked at each other and that confirmed that
He's connected. Yeah. What a great story.
It's really
Thank you
special.
for sharing that.
It really is.
Yeah.
He's a special child. I was quite old when I was
But look where he chose to be incarnated with you and Dave and this place and that choice alone. You got where he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And of course his name is Time.
To review our trip so far, today we are heading down south from the Northlands. We did an amazing trip with David and Rose Spicer, and we met Mamalu Jewel, an amazing group of people living in the tippy top of the north up in Tehanga. Really authentic Maori, amazing. They showed us the plants, they showed us their way of life, their spiritual context of how the Maori live. And now today we're heading south all the way down through Auckland to Rotorua, where we're going to meet with Wikitoria, who's an amazing Maori healer, take us on a healing bushwalk, and then we will bathe in some thermal springs and actually get to spend a cultural evening with the Maori and dinner.
And it's our native Maori pepper tree family, and it's the hottest of all our plants. And we're going to have lunch today and you'll taste it on the vegetables. So if you're game, you can taste it, and the heat will kick in after a few seconds.
Yeah, I start to
Will
feel
numb
it's quite
your
strong.
mouth.
It even looks, the red looks
The
like
most
it would be
amazing
hot.
thing about this plant is that it's a medicine plant, and it's got antibacterial and antibiotic properties. So it's used in a few balms and creams now, but it's also used culinary to flavour food.
And so the locals, how would they make a tea of this, or how would they?
No,
How
we don't
in the
make.
tradition? There's no teas in Maori tradition.
Yes, we have kawakawa tea,
Yeah.
same family, and we'll see the kawakawa soon. But no, this was just used as a poultice as well,
Yeah.
or to put over sores. Yeah, because of the natural antibiotic properties. Cooked up, it becomes a purple drink, and it has bright orange berries in late summer, which you can eat. They're pure antioxidants. And so this helps settle an upset stomach. This is kurumi. It's the hebe family, and that has 2 white flowers. And this was used when we sent a lot of our young Maori men into the Second World War. The dried leaves and flowers were sent, and they drank the tea to help stop diarrhea. More, and it's a bit like a sleeping pill. If you boil it up and have a drink boiled up for about 20 minutes, it helps you sleep.
Yeah.
You have a good sleep or good dreams.
So with the use of the plants and the traditional knowledge, different tribes have different iwis, have different knowledge of the plants. And the different knowledge of the plants that they have, they would have taught their tribe slightly different variations of certain usages.
Yeah, and it depends about the tribal area. I mean, say that you look outside your tribal area, and there is the plant medicine. Say if one area is afflicted by diabetes, they would probably have a lot of kumaraho growing. there's your medicine cabinet out in your environment.
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea then of you have diabetes, connecting with the plant spirit then conveys the knowledge to the hunga,
Yeah. Well, because the Modi, the life essence, the life principle, the life force of the plant is connected to us because we all come from source, Io, and it's like our older brother or sister. It actually strengthens and enhances our immune system and talks to our bodies because we have something in common. But in a sense, it has a higher consciousness.
So the idea of plant spirit, getting plugged in. If the plants were here before us, and then you're just part of the plants, the younger brothers and sisters of the same ecosystem that created us. So we're able to tune into that plant if we get plugged. Do the Maori do anything particular to tune into the plant spirit to be able to understand how to use it? Is there any ceremony or is there any chanting or prayer?
Yes, we have our own prayers and chants that we use.
And do they help connect to the plant spirit?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Particular getting even ceremonies to do before you go into the forest to get.
We always do a prayer
Yeah.
to acknowledge Tāne Mahuti.
Yeah. And have you had any particular experience of going out into the bush and having somebody in mind and then having a plant reach out to you that you would use?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you think
The
that's
plants tell you if you can pick them.
out into the bush and connecting with a plant and having that plant reach out for a certain patient that you might be treating? Is there any coaching from dream life that comes into that?
Yes, often people are taught in dreams,
Yeah.
or we enter a state we call whatumanua, which is like our higher self connected to Io, a state of neutrality.
And within that state, you may get clues on how to use a certain plant.
Yeah, it's your deep knowing, your deep intuition, or whatumanua, the seeing heart.
The seeing heart.
Yeah.
The seeing heart.
Whatumanua.
And what is the seeing? What's the function of the seeing heart? It's just understanding intuitively from a greater.
It's when we enter that state, we're a vessel, so that higher intelligence frequencies work through us, and we understand that all our healing comes through the heart.
Tapu of the
Tapu means restricted or sacred.
And so at funerals then, with you were saying...
Yeah, so when there's a tangi, you go into a tapu, restricted tapu state, and then you have to become noa. So after the formalities, speech-making, prayers and singing, you go and eat.
Yeah.
Or if you go into an urupa, a Maori burial ground, you have to always wash your hands with water after.
But then it
to
became
become
a superstition in
well,
colonial
those
times
cultural
where...
things have always survived, but some, what we call things traditional now, actually came from our colonizers. For instance, the missionaries put us in black, and now you're expected to wear black if you go to
And
a
it's a
tangi
tapu if
funeral.
you don't wear black.
Yes, very frowned upon.
Okay, so here we are heading south from Rotorua with Mount Ruapeho in the background over here, and we're heading through Taupo down to Wellington in the south for the next part of our adventure, where we'll be looking at an exhibit of Maori Rongoā, which is Maori medicine. So this is the Kaikoura Road. It goes through Christchurch all the way down towards Dunedin on the east coast of the South Island.
And 2 years ago, in this area, had a massive earthquake, and when the land itself went up 6 feet. So this road was completely destroyed, and they're undergoing extensive renovation of the road. It's only recently been reopened.
Leaving the South Island behind, we travelled over to Stewart Island. And Stewart Island is the base basically to go on to Ulva Island. While we were on Stewart Island, we saw the kiwi, an endangered species. It was quite amazing. Then travelling over the Ulva Island, which is in a forest that's been restored with all the natural predators left in place and all the colonising predators taken out, the rats and the stoats, leaving the forest back to its natural form.
This is the juvenile Rimu tree that Cook made his brewed beer from for scurvy. What, 70?
Yeah, so it's estimated we've been separate from them for about 75 to 80 million years. We started separating from Australia and slowly drifting south, And so we kept, because we've been isolated for so long, our species have been able to evolve into their own kind of lineages. But we do still have trees like the potocarp, goes back to Gondwandaland days. We share a lot of similar fern species with Australia, and also South America as well, because we were part of that. And also when they've looked at the pollen records in Antarctica, when they've done ice cores, we share similar lineages to that as well.
So it's an ancient species going all the way back there. So are there any unique plants to Ulva Island that are just in this area that have evolved here?
Just in Ulva, not really. I mean, it's more New Zealand wide. Stewart Island, do we have any unique? There's the odd there's a mega herb that I'll point out as we go. Not really. We call it a mega herb. It's a Stilbacarpa lyale is its botanical name. The Maoris call it bunui. I'll point it out as we go. I'll stop and talk about it actually because it's got a bit of history for the Maori people. That's unique to this area.
Yeah.
That's probably the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
Were the Maori here?
Yeah, so they never really settled down here, but they certainly used it for its resources. So they would do trips down here and stay for maybe a month or two.
Yeah.
And again, we'll talk about that a bit further up because with the mega herd, there's a bit of history involved. Stewart Island and on all our offshore islands as well.
It's called the mega herb?
Yeah, it's called Stilbacarpa lyale. It doesn't have a common European name, we just call it mega herb. So it's pretty much gone from Stewart Island now because the deer love it, so they've completely browsed it out of Stewart Island, but it still grows quite well on some of our offshore islands that we call the muttonbird islands. Does everyone know what a muttonbird is? A sooty shearwater? You heard of a sooty shearwater? Yeah. So that's a type of seabird, and we should see some today out on Wildfire. Yeah, so and it's a migratory seabird, and it does something like a 78,000 kilometre return trip, and it breeds down here on some of our offshore islands. It used to breed on the mainland as well, but it's been decimated by the introduced mammals, but it still does quite well on our offshore islands. And this grows prolifically along with it. Now the Maori have got quite a long history of usage of this particular plant. It has hollow stems. And the Maori have also traditionally harvested the sooty shearwater. So we refer to it as mutton bird because the meat's quite a dark meat, it looks a bit like mutton meat. And it's the fledgling chicks, so they come and they breed on our offshore islands, and the Maori have traditionally gone down and harvested the fledgling chicks as they come out of their burrows. They grab them, pluck them, gut them, and they put aside the fat from around. They're very fatty, oily birds, so any fat they harvest from the organs they put to one side. Then they go off down to the coastline and they pick massive amounts of the bull kelp, the real big bull kelp, and they then use these hollow stems to blow that kelp up into a bag, and they put the gutted and plucked sooty shearwater chicks, or the mutton bird, into the kelp bags. They melt the fat that they collected when they were gutting them and things, and then they pour that melted fat over top of the birds, and then stitch that bag of kelp. They grab another stem and suck the air out of the bag, and then stitch that bag up using like a flax or something like that, something quite fibrous. And then that acts like a vacuum sealer. sucks all the air out, and those birds then last for about 2 years in their own fat. So it was a really great way to harvest excess and, you know. It's absolutely really beautiful and dainty. It's gorgeous gorgeous wee guy. It's done very, very well this year, the lady slipper orchid. Everywhere I've seen it, it's just been in full bloom. This one up above it is bamboo orchid, but that flowered about 2 months ago. It's like unchanged in something like the last, 80 to 100 million years. It's stayed the same according to fossil records. In actual fact, these leaves are actually stem cells, they're not leaves, and then the actual leaf cells are these tiny, you can hardly see them, tiny little wee kind of points on the end of them is their true leaf. So they're quite an interesting wee guy.
And we're looking out on mountains that become the fjords of Milford Sound and Doubtful Sound. And ahead of us is Lake Manapuri. Those mountains in the background are covered with trees that are existing in sheer rock, and they're interlocking nets of roots actually supported by lichen and moss, and grow full happy lives. This is truly nature's paradise, pristine with very little human contact.